My name is Robert Chin and I'm writing this story because I need to get it out of my head. It's been 3 months since everything happened and I still wake up some mornings forgetting just for a moment that my life completely changed on a Tuesday in September. I've been married to Lisa for 12 years. We met in graduate school. She was studying business administration while I was finishing my engineering degree. She was brilliant, ambitious, and had this infectious laugh that could light up any room. We got married right after graduation, bought a small house in the suburbs, and built what I thought was a solid, happy life together. Lisa started her own marketing consultancy 4 years ago, and I was incredibly proud of her success. She had a natural talent for understanding what clients needed and delivering results that exceeded their expectations. Her business grew quickly, and she eventually brought in a partner, Daniel Rodriguez, who handled the financial side while she focused on creative strategy and client relationships. Daniel seemed like a good fit for the business. He was smart, professional, and complemented Lisa's skills well. I met him at a few company events and found him personable enough, though we never developed any kind of friendship. He was divorced, lived alone in a downtown apartment, and seemed entirely focused on work. Lisa often mentioned how dedicated he was, how he'd work late into the night to ensure their clients got the best possible service. The business trip started about 8 months ago. Lisa's company had landed some major clients in other cities, and she needed to travel regularly to maintain those relationships. At first it was mostly day trips, fly out in the morning, meetings all day, back home by evening. I didn't think much of it. Business is business, and I understood that success sometimes required sacrifices. But gradually the trips became longer and more frequent. 2-day trips became 3-day trips. 3-day trips became week-long engagements. Lisa would explain that clients wanted more extensive consultations, that building relationships took time, that the competition for big accounts was fierce and required extra attention. I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? In 12 years of marriage, Lisa had never given me any reason to doubt her honesty or faithfulness. She was methodical, reliable, and always kept me informed about her schedule. When she traveled, she'd call every night to tell me about her day, complain about hotel food, and ask how things were going at home. The first time Daniel accompanied her on a business trip, it made perfect sense. They were pitching a major account that required both marketing strategy and financial projections. Lisa explained that having Daniel there would give them a significant advantage over competitors who might send only one representative. "It's just business, Rob," she said as she packed her suitcase for their 3-day trip to Denver. "Daniel knows the numbers inside and out, and I can't afford to lose this account because I tried to handle the financial presentation myself." I helped her pack, kissed her goodbye, and went about my normal routine while she was gone. She called each evening as usual, telling me about the client meetings, the challenges they were facing, how hard they were working to win the account. She sounded tired but excited about their prospects. They won the account. Lisa came home energized and happy, full of stories about the successful presentation and the celebration dinner afterward. Daniel had apparently been instrumental in closing the deal, she said, and their partnership was really starting to pay off. Over the next few months, Lisa and Daniel traveled together more frequently. Always for legitimate business reasons, client presentations, industry conferences, meetings with potential new accounts. Lisa's company was thriving, their client list was expanding, and the revenue growth was impressive. I was proud of what she was building and supportive of whatever it took to make the business successful. But I started to notice small changes in Lisa's behavior when she returned from these trips. She seemed more energetic, more talkative, almost glowing with excitement about work. She'd spend hours on the phone with Daniel after business hours, going over client details, planning strategies, discussing new opportunities. Their professional relationship seemed to be deepening into something more like a genuine partnership. I didn't think there was anything inappropriate about it. Lisa had always been passionate about her work, and having a business partner who shared that passion made sense. They were building something together, and it was natural that they'd spend a lot of time collaborating and planning. The turning point came in late July. Lisa announced that she and Daniel had been invited to a week-long industry conference in San Francisco, followed by meetings with 3 major potential clients on the West Coast. It would be their longest trip together, but also potentially their biggest opportunity to expand the business nationally. "This could change everything for us, Rob," she said, eyes bright with excitement. "If we land even 2 of these accounts, we'll need to hire additional staff. We might even need to open a West Coast office." I encouraged her to go, of course. This was her dream and I wanted to support it in every way possible. We arranged for my sister to check on things at home, and Lisa spent days preparing presentations and research materials for the trip. The night before she left, We had dinner at our favorite restaurant. Lisa was nervous but excited, talking through her presentation strategies and asking my opinion on various approaches. She seemed genuinely focused on the business aspects of the trip, and I felt good about sending her off with my full support and encouragement. For the first 4 days of the trip, everything seemed normal. Lisa called each evening to update me on the conference sessions, the networking events, the insights she was gaining about industry trends. She sounded professional, focused, and appropriately tired from long days of meetings and presentations. But on the 5th day, something changed in her voice during our evening call. "How was the client meeting today?" I asked as I did every night. "It went really well," she said, but there was something different in her tone, a breathiness and excitement that seemed to go beyond professional satisfaction. "Daniel was amazing. He really connected with the client team, and I think we have a strong chance of winning this account." "That's great, honey. You two make a good team." "We really do," she said, and there was something in the way she said it that made me pause. "Rob, I need to tell you that we'll probably need to extend the trip by a couple of days. The third client wants to meet with us over the weekend, and it's too good an opportunity to pass up." This was new. Lisa had never extended a business trip before without discussing it with me first. But the explanation made sense, and I didn't want to stand in the way of a potential major account. "Of course," I said. "Do what you need to do for the business. Thank you for understanding. I know this is a lot of traveling lately, but it's really important for our growth." "I get it, Lisa. I'm proud of what you're building." But after I hung up the phone, I felt unsettled in a way I couldn't quite explain. Something about the conversation felt off, though I couldn't pinpoint what it was. The weekend passed without any evening calls from Lisa. She sent a few text messages, brief updates about meetings, apologies for being too busy to talk, promises to call soon. I told myself it was understandable. Weekend client meetings were probably less formal, and she might not have had the privacy for our usual conversations. When she finally called on Sunday evening, she sounded different again. More distant, more distracted. She talked about the client meetings in vague terms, focusing more on general impressions than the specific details she usually shared. "How's Daniel holding up with all these long days?" I asked, partly to make conversation and partly because I was curious about her business partner's perspective on the extended trip. "Oh, Daniel's been great," she said, and again there was that note in her voice: warmth, appreciation, something that seemed to go beyond professional respect. "He's really stepped up during this trip. I don't know what I'd do without him." After she hung up, I sat in our empty house feeling confused and slightly concerned. Lisa had never talked about anyone the way she was talking about Daniel. There was an intimacy in her voice when she mentioned him, a fondness that seemed more personal than professional. I shook off the feeling, telling myself I was being paranoid. Lisa and Daniel were business partners working closely together under stressful circumstances. It was natural that they'd develop a strong working relationship and mutual appreciation. There was nothing inappropriate about recognizing a colleague's contributions or feeling grateful for their support. Lisa came home on Tuesday evening, 2 days later than originally planned. She was exhausted but satisfied with the trip's results. They had successfully landed 2 of the 3 potential accounts, she told me, which would significantly boost the company's revenue and require expanding their team. "Daniel was incredible throughout the whole process," she said as she unpacked her suitcase. "I honestly don't think we could have won these accounts without him. He has this way of connecting with clients that really impressed me." I listened to her talk about the successful meetings, the new business opportunities, and Daniel's contributions to their success. She seemed genuinely excited about the professional developments, but there was something else in her manner, a glow, an energy that seemed to go beyond business success. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more changes in Lisa's behavior. She was more attentive to her appearance, spending extra time on her hair and makeup even for routine office days. She bought new clothes, professional outfits that were stylish and flattering in a way her previous wardrobe hadn't been. She started working out more regularly, saying she needed to stay energetic for the increased demands of the growing business. Her phone habits changed too. She'd always been professional about work calls, but now she'd take certain calls in private, walking to another room or stepping outside to talk. When I asked about it casually, she explained that some of the new client information was confidential and she needed to be careful about privacy. Lisa and Daniel began traveling together more frequently as they serviced their new accounts and pursued additional opportunities. The trips were shorter now, usually 2 or 3 days, but they happened almost every other week. Each time Lisa returned home energized and full of stories about their successful meetings and Daniel's impressive performance with clients. I started paying closer attention to the details of these trips. The hotels they stayed in seemed unusually nice for business travel, boutique properties and upscale chains rather than the budget-friendly options Lisa had used when traveling alone. When I mentioned it, she explained that their new high-end clients expected a certain level of professionalism, and staying in quality hotels was part of projecting the right image. The expense reports from her business trips showed dinners at expensive restaurants, charges that seemed high for standard business meals. Again, Lisa had reasonable explanations. Client entertainment was crucial for maintaining relationships, and their new accounts expected to be taken to nice establishments. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in our marriage. Lisa was physically present when she was home, but emotionally she seemed distant, distracted. She'd sit through dinner conversations with a slight smile, responding appropriately but seeming to be thinking about something else. When I tried to be affectionate, she was responsive but not enthusiastic, as if she was going through the motions of being a wife while her real energy and attention were focused elsewhere. The breaking point came in early September. Lisa announced another business trip with Daniel, this one to Chicago for a major industry conference followed by client meetings. It would be 5 days, she said, and could potentially lead to their biggest account yet. Something about the way she talked about this trip felt different. She was more animated, more excited than usual. She spent extra time planning her wardrobe, packing clothes that seemed more suited for social occasions than business meetings. When I commented on a particularly elegant dress she was packing, she said the conference had several formal evening events that were important for networking. The first 2 days of the trip followed the familiar pattern: evening phone calls with updates about conference sessions and meetings. But Lisa's voice sounded different. Happier, more alive than she'd sounded in months. She talked about the conference presentations and the people she was meeting, but there was an underlying excitement that seemed to go beyond professional interest. On the third evening she didn't call at all. I waited until midnight, then sent a text message asking if everything was okay. She responded an hour later, "Sorry, networking event ran very late. Everything fine. Talk tomorrow." The next evening's call was brief and distracted. Lisa said she was tired from long days and needed to get some rest before the client meetings. She'd call me after the meetings were finished, she promised. She didn't call the next day either. Another late-night text: "Client meetings going great but running long. Daniel and I need to do prep work for tomorrow. We'll call soon." I spent Friday evening pacing around our empty house, feeling increasingly anxious and confused. Lisa had never gone 2 days without calling during a business trip. Even when she was extremely busy, she'd always found a few minutes to check in and maintain our connection. By Saturday morning, I was genuinely worried. I called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking her to call me back as soon as possible, saying I was concerned about not hearing from her. She called back that afternoon, sounding rushed and slightly irritated. "Rob, I'm sorry I haven't called, but this has been an incredibly intensive few days. We're on the verge of landing the biggest account in the company's history, and it's requiring all of our attention." "I understand that, Lisa, but you've never gone this long without talking to me during a trip." I was worried something had happened. "Nothing's happened except amazing business opportunities. Daniel and I have been working around the clock to make sure we don't lose this chance." There it was again, Daniel's name mentioned with that special warmth, that tone of appreciation and connection that she'd never used when talking about anyone else. "When are you coming home?" I asked. "Tomorrow evening as planned. But Rob, I need you to understand that things are changing for the business. These opportunities are going to require more travel, more intensive client work. I need your support to take advantage of them." "You have my support, Lisa. You know that. I just miss talking to you when you're away." "I know, and I'm sorry. After this account is settled, things should calm down a bit." But things didn't calm down. If anything, they intensified. Lisa and Daniel's business trips became more frequent and longer in duration. Lisa's explanations became more elaborate and detailed, as if she was working harder to justify the trips and convince me of their necessity. At the same time, she became more critical of small things at home. She complained about the house being messy, about my work schedule, about our social life being boring. She suggested we needed to shake things up, try new restaurants, meet new people, expand our horizons. It was as if our quiet, comfortable life together had become insufficient for her somehow. I started dreading her business trips and resenting Daniel's role in taking her away from home so frequently. I began to dislike him without any rational reason, simply because he was the constant factor in Lisa's new pattern of behavior. When she talked about him, which she did increasingly often, I felt a stab of something that might have been jealousy, though I tried to convince myself I was being ridiculous. The confrontation I'd been avoiding finally came in late September. Lisa announced yet another trip with Daniel, this one to Atlanta for a week-long client intensive. As she described the trip, the important client, the complex project, the need for both partners to be present, I felt something snap inside me. Lisa, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. She looked up from her packing, surprised by the seriousness in my voice. Of course, Rob. What is it? Are you having an affair with Daniel? The question hung in the air between us like a live wire. Lisa's face went through several expressions: surprise, hurt, anger, and finally something that looked like resignation. Why would you ask me that? She said quietly. Because everything has changed since you started traveling with him. The way you talk about him, the way you light up when you mention his name, the way you've become distant from me and critical of our life together. Because you've stopped calling when you're on trips with him, because you're different when you come back, because I feel like I'm losing my wife to someone else. Lisa sat down on the edge of our bed, still holding the dress she'd been about to pack. She was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, I felt our marriage hanging in the balance. Rob, she said finally, I need to tell you something and you're not going to like it. My heart started pounding. This was it, the confession I'd been dreading but somehow knew was coming. I have developed feelings for Daniel, she said, not looking at me. I didn't plan it, I didn't want it to happen, but it did. And yes, we've crossed lines that we shouldn't have crossed. The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I'd suspected it, hearing her admit it made it real in a way that nearly knocked me over. How long? I managed to ask. It started during the San Francisco trip. We were working late one night in his hotel room going over presentation materials and something just happened. We both knew it was wrong, but we couldn't seem to stop ourselves. And since then we've been struggling with it. We've tried to keep things professional, but when we're traveling together, away from our normal lives, it's been impossible to maintain boundaries. I felt like I was drowning. The woman I'd loved and trusted for 12 years was admitting to an affair with her business partner, confirming every suspicion I'd been trying to dismiss. Are you in love with him? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Lisa started crying. I don't know, Rob. I'm so confused about everything. I love you, I love our life together, but what I feel for Daniel is different. It's exciting and intense and makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years. So what happens now? Are you leaving me for him? I don't know. That's why I need to go on this trip. Daniel and I need to figure out what we're doing, whether this is just a temporary infatuation or something more serious. We need to decide if we're going to end it and try to go back to being business partners, or if we're going to acknowledge that our feelings have changed everything. I stared at my wife, this woman I'd thought I knew completely, and realized I didn't know her at all. The Lisa I'd married would never have had an affair. The Lisa I'd built a life with would never have talked about leaving me for another man with such calm detachment. So you're going to Atlanta to decide whether you want to stay married to me or start a new life with Daniel? Rob, it's not that simple. There are business considerations too. Daniel and I are partners. If we end our personal relationship badly, it could destroy the company we've built. What about destroying our marriage? Does that factor into your calculations? Lisa cried harder. Of course it does. Rob, I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you or put our marriage at risk. But I can't ignore these feelings, and I can't make decisions about my future without understanding what Daniel and I really have together. I felt anger rising alongside the devastation. So I'm supposed to wait at home while you go on a romantic getaway with your lover to decide whether you want to come back to me? It's not a romantic getaway. It's a business trip that will give us time to talk privately and figure out what we're doing. Lisa, do you hear yourself? You're planning to spend a week in another city with the man you're having an affair with, and you're asking me to be understanding about it. I'm asking you to give me time to sort through the most complicated situation I've ever faced. I'm asking you to trust that I'll make the right decision for everyone involved. Trust. I laughed bitterly. You've been lying to me for months, having an affair behind my back, and now you want me to trust you to go away with your lover and make the right decision? Lisa stood up and faced me directly. Rob, I'm going to Atlanta tomorrow. When I come back, we'll talk about what happens next. I know this is horrible for you and I'm sorry for that. But I can't make a decision about the rest of my life without having all the information I need. That night, we slept in the same bed for what I somehow knew would be the last time. Lisa lay on her side with her back to me, and I stared at the ceiling, feeling like my entire world was collapsing around me. She left the next morning as planned. I drove her to the airport and we barely spoke during the ride. At the departure gate, she kissed me goodbye, a sad, guilty kiss that felt like an apology and a farewell at the same time. "I'll call you," she said. "Will you?" I replied, and she didn't answer. The week Lisa was in Atlanta was the longest week of my life. I took time off work because I couldn't concentrate on anything. I walked through our house like a ghost, seeing reminders of our life together everywhere and wondering if it was all about to disappear. Lisa called twice during the week, brief, awkward conversations where she asked how I was doing and gave vague updates about making progress in figuring things out. She sounded different on these calls, lighter, happier, like someone who was falling in love. It was torture to listen to. By the end of the week, I had convinced myself that she wasn't coming back. I imagined her calling to say she was staying in Atlanta with Daniel, that their business partnership had become a life partnership, that our marriage was over. But she did come back. She walked through our front door on Sunday evening looking tanned and rested and somehow transformed. She seemed older, more confident, more self-possessed than when she'd left. "We need to talk," she said, setting down her suitcase. We sat in our living room, the same room where we'd had so many comfortable evenings together, where we'd planned our future and shared our dreams, and Lisa told me about her decision. "Rob, I'm sorry to hurt you, but I can't continue our marriage. What Daniel and I have discovered together is too important to ignore. We're in love and we want to build a life together." Even though I'd expected it, hearing the words was devastating. "So you're leaving me for him?" "I'm ending our marriage because I've realized I'm not the same person I was when we got married. I've changed and what I need from life has changed. Daniel makes me feel like the person I want to be." "And what about the person you promised to be when you married me? What about the vows we made to each other?" Lisa looked genuinely pained. "I meant those vows when I made them, Rob. But people change. I can't spend the rest of my life living up to promises I made when I was a different person with different dreams." "What about the business? Are you and Daniel planning to continue as partners while you're also, whatever you are?" "We're going to try. We think we can make it work." I felt a surge of anger. "This is all so convenient for you, isn't it? You get to keep your successful business and upgrade to a more exciting partner. You get everything you want while I lose everything that mattered to me." "Rob, that's not fair. This hasn't been easy for anyone." Daniel struggled with his feelings too. He felt terrible about betraying your trust and potentially destroying your marriage. Oh, how noble of him. I'm sure his guilt was really painful while he was sleeping with my wife. Lisa flinched. "I know you're angry and you have every right to be. But please don't make this uglier than it has to be. We're going to need to work together on the practical aspects of separating our lives." Over the next 2 months, we went through the mechanical process of ending our marriage. Lisa moved out of our house and into Daniel's downtown apartment. We met with lawyers, divided our assets, signed papers that dissolved 12 years of shared life with cold, legal efficiency. The hardest part was watching Lisa transform into someone I barely recognized. She seemed happier, more energetic, more alive than she'd been in years. She dressed differently, talked differently, even walked differently. It was as if being with Daniel had unlocked some version of herself that had been dormant during our marriage. When people asked what happened, I found it difficult to explain. She had an affair with her business partner, was the simple answer, but it didn't capture the complexity of what had actually occurred. Lisa hadn't just cheated on me, she'd discovered that she wanted a completely different life than the one we'd built together. I went through the stages of grief you're supposed to experience: denial, anger, bargaining, depression. But I also went through stages that don't appear in psychology textbooks: humiliation, self-doubt, and a crushing sense of failure. I questioned everything about our marriage, wondering if Lisa had been unhappy all along and I'd been too oblivious to notice. Friends and family were supportive but didn't really know what to say. My sister kept insisting that Lisa would realize she'd made a mistake and come back to me. My best friend from college suggested that I was better off without someone who could betray me so completely. My parents were hurt and confused, having always liked Lisa and considered her part of the family. But the most difficult conversations were with myself. Late at night, alone in the house that had once been our home, I replayed every moment of our marriage, looking for signs I'd missed, trying to understand how I'd failed as a husband. Had I been too complacent, too comfortable, too boring? Had I taken Lisa for granted, assuming she'd always be satisfied with our quiet, stable life together? 3 months after Lisa moved out, I ran into her at a coffee shop near her old office. She was with Daniel, the first time I'd seen them together as a couple. They looked happy, relaxed, completely comfortable with each other. Daniel had his hand on the small of her back as they waited in line, and Lisa was laughing at something he'd said with that infectious laugh I remembered from when we first met. When she saw me, Lisa's expression became guarded, concerned. She approached me cautiously while Daniel waited with their drinks. "Rob, how are you doing?" she asked, and I could hear genuine concern in her voice. "I'm surviving," I said. "You look happy." "I am," she said simply. "I'm sorry that my happiness has come at such a cost to you." "Are you? Sorry, I mean." Lisa considered the question seriously. "I'm sorry that you got hurt. I'm sorry that our marriage had to end. But I'm not sorry for following my heart and choosing a life that feels authentic to me." I looked at her, this woman I'd loved for 12 years, who now seemed like a stranger, and realized that I was talking to someone who had fundamentally changed. The Lisa I'd married would have been devastated by the pain she'd caused me. This Lisa was sad about it, but not devastated. She'd made her choice and was at peace with the consequences. "I hope it works out for you," I said, and I meant it at least partially. "Thank you," she said. "I hope you find happiness too, Rob. You deserve it." As I watched her walk back to Daniel, I realized that my marriage had ended not because Lisa had betrayed me, but because she had outgrown me. The business trips, the affair, the deception, those were symptoms of a deeper problem. Lisa had discovered that she wanted excitement, passion, and adventure in her life, and I represented stability, comfort, and predictability. It wasn't that I was a bad husband or that our marriage was fundamentally flawed. It was that Lisa had changed into someone who needed different things from life and love. Daniel offered her a partnership that was both professional and personal, a relationship built on shared ambition and mutual admiration for each other's strengths. I couldn't compete with that because I couldn't become a different person. I am who I am, steady, loyal, content with simple pleasures and quiet satisfactions. For 12 years that had been enough for Lisa. But somewhere along the way it had stopped being enough. Now, 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I'm slowly rebuilding my life. I've started dating again, tentatively and with mixed results. I've redecorated the house, removing reminders of my marriage and creating spaces that reflect who I am as a single person. I've reconnected with old friends and developed new hobbies. Some days are better than others. Some days I feel optimistic about the future and grateful to be free from a marriage that had become one-sided. Other days I miss Lisa so intensely that I can barely function, remembering not the woman who left me but the woman I fell in love with all those years ago. I've learned that not all betrayals are malicious. Sometimes people betray the ones they love not out of cruelty or selfishness, but because they've discovered they need something different from life. Lisa's affair wasn't really about sex or romance. It was about finding a partner who made her feel like the person she wanted to be. I don't forgive her for the lying and deception, for putting me through months of suspicion and doubt while she figured out what she wanted. But I understand why she did it. She was trying to have both lives, the security of our marriage and the excitement of her new relationship, until she could decide which one she really wanted. The business trips that destroyed my marriage were never really about business. They were about Lisa exploring a different version of herself, testing whether the feelings she developed for Daniel were real and lasting. Each trip was another step away from our marriage and toward her new life. I wish she had been honest with me sooner. I wish she had given me the chance to fight for our marriage or at least to prepare for its end. But I also understand that sometimes people don't know what they want until they find it, and Lisa found what she wanted in Daniel. Their business continues to thrive. I see their company mentioned in industry publications, and Lisa's photo occasionally appears in local business magazines. She looks successful, confident, and happy. I'm glad for her success, even though it came at the cost of our marriage. As for me, I'm learning to build a life that doesn't depend on someone else's choices or feelings. I'm discovering interests and friendships that I neglected during my marriage. I'm slowly becoming comfortable with solitude and learning to find meaning and satisfaction in my own accomplishments and experiences. The house is quiet now, but it's my quiet. The evenings are lonely sometimes, but they're also peaceful. I no longer spend my time wondering where Lisa is or when she'll call or whether she's happy in her hotel room with Daniel. I spend my time thinking about my own plans, my own goals, my own future. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust someone again the way I trusted Lisa. The betrayal damaged something fundamental in me, and I'm not sure it can be completely repaired. But I'm learning that trust doesn't have to be absolute to be meaningful, and that love doesn't have to last forever to have been real and valuable. Lisa and I had 12 good years together. We built a life, shared experiences, supported each other through challenges and celebrations. The fact that it ended doesn't negate the value of what we had. The fact that she chose someone else doesn't mean that what we shared was meaningless or false. I'm trying to remember the woman I married rather than the woman who left me. I'm trying to hold on to the love without holding on to the pain. Most days I succeed at least partially. Some days, I even feel grateful for the experience of having loved someone completely, even though that love wasn't ultimately reciprocated. The business trips are over now. Lisa and Daniel travel together openly, as partners in every sense of the word. They're building something together, a business, a relationship, a life, that apparently gives them both what they need. I'm building something too, though it's different from what they have. I'm building a life that's entirely my own, based on my own choices and shaped by my own values. It's smaller than the life Lisa and I shared, but it's also more authentic to who I am. Sometimes I wonder if Lisa thinks about our marriage, if she misses anything about the life we had together. But mostly I try not to wonder about Lisa at all. She made her choice and she seems happy with it. I'm working on making my choice, to move forward, to remain open to new possibilities, to believe that my story isn't over just because one chapter ended badly. The betrayal taught me that love isn't always enough to sustain a marriage. People change, needs evolve, and sometimes what once brought two people together no longer keeps them together. It's a painful lesson, but it's also a liberating one. I don't have to spend the rest of my life trying to be someone I'm not in order to keep someone who no longer wants to be kept. I'm learning to be enough for myself, and maybe someday I'll find someone for whom I'm enough exactly as I am. Until then, I'm building a life that I can be proud of, with or without a partner to share it. The business trips that ended my marriage were really journeys of self-discovery for Lisa. In a strange way, they've become journeys of self-discovery for me too. I'm discovering who I am when I'm not trying to be the husband of someone who no longer wants to be my wife. It's not the life I planned, but it's becoming a life I can live with dignity and hope. And maybe in the end that's enough. Thank you for listening to my story. If you had a similar experience, share it in the comments. And also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos.